Niagara, and I'm going to do an I'm going to sort myself out and do an intro. I keep thinking of it every morning, but when I kind of the weekend, I forgot all about it. Anyway, see if I can do an intro for us. Okay, so let's just start. Welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. Welcome, and
Dun, dun, dun,
morning,
dun, dun, dun. I'm Dave.
morning, Dave. Yeah, and we'll go from there. Okay, so
All right.
first story up, Niagara Regional Police talking about saying despite an escalation in violent crimes in recent times, we're relatively safe in Niagara, which is still one of the safest parts of the country. But Niagara Regional Police are concerned that there's an increasing number of assaults, shootings, and incidents involving weapons. This is according to Chief Brian McCulloch. And of course, who better than the police, who would be maintaining the records of those kind of crimes? You know, the information about those kind of crimes. But I sometimes wonder if what we're seeing here at the moment is actually a my thinking is sometimes I've heard so many stories about people who say, "Oh yeah, but they've never done anything to stop the person robbing my store. My store has been robbed 5 or 6 times." We hear those stories all the time, and the problem here is that the police may be tied up with more violent crimes, but they're not actually engaging on the crime on many of the crimes that also matter.
Well, I'm not really happy with the kind of data that the police do collect because in the past they haven't really found the sources of the guns in which they find in crimes. So when researchers tried to find out where the guns were coming from in Canadian crimes, they found that the Canadian police did not bother to find out where the gun came from, and then just went off and destroyed the gun later on. So the nobody could say for sure where the guns would come from. It's very obvious that most of the guns are coming from the United States now because when they do start tracing them, that's what they find. And we find that when it was down east after that massacre happened, the guy went nuts and he killed 20 people in Nova Scotia. It took forever to find out where the guns were coming from. Every day, the press asked the police, "Where's those guns came from? Where do they come from?" And they refused to tell them
Yeah,
because they didn't have the ability to find out. And all they did was find out that one or two of them were legal. The rest were bought illegal, or one or two of them may have been legal firearms. The rest were either bought illegally in Canada or they came from the United States. So we don't really. The police have the resources are becoming limited. Their way
but
of calculating where and what crime is. I don't really like their abilities to give us information because they don't have the as yet they don't have abilities. I mean, a simple thing like trying to determine where that gun was come from and registered as part of the crime.
yeah,
I'm sure
and
they're doing that now, but they haven't done that in the past. And they leave a lot of things out. Even in this article, it says that there's certain statistics weren't available to them that should be.
yeah, and one of the things that they talk about it in the headline. They talk about it here in the headline that they actually put gangs, drugs, and poverty said to be the contributing to an increase in violent crime. I would basically put it. I would put it as poverty, which drives, of course, increases in illegal use of many things, including drugs. Um, and gangs take advantage of such situations, and I'd say that that is probably the way we should be looking at poverty. Is actually probably the one of our biggest challenges right now, and that's probably driving crime. That, and it used to be said that poverty drove crime in terms of the guy might pass a a guy might pass I mean, starving homeless person might pass a greengrocer's store and steal an apple and eat that as they walked on by. And yes, that happens, but we tend to not to have grocery stores like that anymore.
Well, yeah, you're talking about the pilfering in the stores and that. Well, this particular crime, this is about violent crimes.
Yeah,
Now, I would say that the more pilfering you have, then it will lead to more violent crimes if you
yeah.
don't stop it there.
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, yes.
The pilfering is happening because it's so easily done, and there is no consequences. So
Yeah,
the honest people like you and me that go into a store and buy something have to pay for those who pilfer. Uh, when we pay, so many cents for a red bell pepper, we have to say that maybe 3 cents of that is due to the people who steal.
oh,
Or 1 or 2 cents of it is because of stealing.
that's undoubtedly true, and I'm not condoning that person who steals, but but it's a fact of life, and so I'm just pointing it out, right? And one of the things McCulloch is saying here is, in the worst case scenarios involving homicides, assaults, shootings, intimidation, extortion, humans and firearm trafficking, is that by and large street level trafficking remains a most profitable endeavor. Yeah.
Well, yes, because once you have an addiction, an addict, you've got somebody that wants it. It's like food. What wouldn't a starving person do to get food? They would do everything. They would steal anything, do anything, and so would an addict. And addicts come along very easily because of the mental health issues that are out there. They're all related: homelessness, addiction, mental health, poverty. Mike, I think, put up it says it's not a crime feeding yourself. The crime is homeless and starving in Canada. That's a situation that is increasing, and we can pretty well count on crime going up, can't we? Because the poor and the homeless of our societies are growing. Once you have that, then you have a situation where poor and homeless, and those other people who are in homes but have very limited aspirations, will turn to drugs. And when they do turn to drugs, that means there's going to be lots of money being made by gangs and everything. It's a quick pile of cash, I can tell you. And if
Yeah.
you want those drugs, you're going to pay for them. You're going to steal from grandma. You're going to steal from grandpa. You're going to steal from your neighbor to get those drugs. And sooner or later, in one drug outfit selling drugs to another drug outfit, and of course you have gangs, and then the gangs will start fighting each other, and then there will be all kinds of extortion going on, because that's what happens when you have poverty. How are we going to break that cycle? That's the whole thing. We are looking at a future of much more violent crime. How do
what
we
they're
stop that
basically
cycle?
saying here, one of the things they're saying here, in Toronto there are 32 active street gangs, and in Niagara there's 32 active street gangs, and most of them are commuting between Toronto and Niagara. So they are Niagara based, but mainly Toronto fed.
Well, Toronto's where they're going to be able to get the guns and the drugs. Well, they might be taking
their organization is
they might
run
be
out
taking
of
the
Toronto.
guns to Toronto, because we're right on the border here. So being a border, they may be able to get the drugs faster here in the border, and then feed Toronto, and they probably also be able to get the guns that the big gangs of Toronto are needing.
I wonder, actually, Dave, the commuting is basically, some of this might well be, they send when they know the Toronto police are looking out for one or two of their members, they send those members down here, and vice versa. So
They
you
could
keep
do.
the local police guessing.
They could do, but the days of police not cooperating with one another have ended.
Yeah, I know. But still, it still takes a time for the Niagara Regional Police to get notified that they've got a Toronto suspect in their area.
Yeah, and although it doesn't say this here, but most of the gangs are people of color.
Nothing
Except maybe the motorcycle gangs. That would be mostly people not of color. Right? But
white is a color, Dave.
What's that?
White is a color.
Yeah, well, it could be like white, because, well, no, even the motorcycle gangs are taking in blacks now. So, but basically, the street gangs were usually made up of people of color, particularly if they come from Toronto. That indicates that, well, of course, they're new immigrants or from immigrant families that haven't made it and are living in poverty, and so they take the easy route. I mean, I don't know, if I was a young poor guy, I might be a drug dealer. Who knows? Like, would that be the route that I took?
But again, Dave, remember what you've said before. When it comes to publishing statistics, the police in Canada are not allowed to publish statistics that talk about racial distinctions.
Yeah, that was when Harper came in. He made that a rule that you couldn't publish the race of a person, and it got pretty awkward there for a while, because when they were describing a criminal, you could tell if it was white and you could tell if it's black because of the information missing, right? Man is 5'10" and wearing a coat, but then if it was a white guy, it'd be man is 5'10", red hair, blue eyes, wearing a coat. But if it was a black guy, all you got is 5'10" wearing a coat. So you knew it was a black guy, or but now they can describe him as Afro features or Asian features or South Asian features. But for a while there, it was really stupid. You could always tell if it was a black guy because of the information missing from the description. Man robs bank, is 5'10" and wearing a brown coat. Man robs bank, is 5'10". He's got red hair, blue eyes, and wearing a brown coat. So you can tell. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, and I'm just wondering, I'm just asking the question as to whether that is a part of what you're seeing here, that they are not actually reporting. They're not actually reporting the ethnicity of those gangs. And
no, they're not. But and probably they're not exact. Well, they should actually. Basically, like, we do know that the Somalian refugees that came into Canada, of their number, they are controlling much of the heroin trade now. They're the ones that are selling the heroin. They've got a grip of the heroin trade from Toronto to out west. They've taken the heroin out west. Now, we know that there are Somali gangs because they came from the Somalian community.
There's Somalian gangs in Mogadishu.
Well, we're talking about the ones here.
I know.
Okay, I know. And I don't think there's a strong connection between the gangs in Mogadishu to here. The gangs in Mogadishu are more.
I was going to say that what I was going to say is that there's a there's a potential of importation of violence.
Well, of course, when refugees come into the country, usually the refugees are salted with all kinds of criminals. That happened with the Vietnamese boat people. It happened with the Cambodians.
They're bringing in people that are already predisposed to commit violence, because the easy way out for many people who are hunted is actually, I'm a refugee. I'm not.
That's exactly what I said.
Criminal. Yeah.
That's exactly what I said. Yeah. They salt the group. So they got a number of refugees, and they're always salted with seasoned criminals that are finding a way of getting into the country.
Yeah.
In any case, So then we also found that in times past, it was the Italians that were part of organized crime, and then before that, the Irish. So anytime you have new people coming into the country, you're going to find there's an element of crime because it's an easy way to get to from A to B very quickly, at least
Yeah.
monetarily wise. And what are you going to do if you're in a rut? And your community's in a rut and there's no easy way out. Well, if you're a young man, you might take that road,
Yeah.
and it's glorious and it's exciting too. You know,
Well,
you're a gang member, you carry a gun, you make lots of money. You don't have to go and push push a time card. No, not you. You know, you just sell a little dope here and there. And what's wrong with that, right? Everybody wants dope. You want to blow, you want some blow once in a while, don't you? Yeah, I can get that for you. Yeah, just hey, here, I'll give you this. Just don't overdo it, okay? And because I don't want you to die, I need you as a customer.
yeah. Okay. Yep. Let's move on. Let's move on. So in December, they found that 61% of people in Canada believe that immigration levels should be reduced, which is a turnaround of the prior year, according to the research carried out by Nanos Research, where the year ago they were saying that 61% of Canadians thought that immigration levels should either stay, either be increased or stay the same, in keeping with the decades-old consensus. But now the view is the other way around, and the challenge here is that the Liberals have been ignoring advice that has been given to the government by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada that explicitly flagged 2 years ago a risk that they ignored, which was that boosting immigration numbers amid a housing shortage was a disastrous policy, and that's proving to be the case right now.
How many times have we talked about that on the
Yeah,
show?
we have talked
And
about
we
exactly that,
and
and
it's
there
kind of
comes a time, there comes a time when you've got to say, sorry, the border's closed right now. We don't have the capability of taking anybody new in because we can't house them. Be blunt about it. It's not, I know there's always people out there who will accuse the country of being racist, etc. But that's not true. Um, at the moment, we have a crisis in Canada where there's no affordable homes, and affordability is being driven by the fact that there is no homes, full stop. And at the end of the day, we need the homes before we can switch on the immigration again.
well
Now,
the
the irony, of course, means that we're letting refugees in despite that.
yeah. We're kind of stuck. We're kind of stuck in our between our ideals and the practicality. As far
Yeah,
as the as far as the refugees are concerned, we've stopped mostly. We had to make it in order for the United States for us to be able to stop the border at Roxham Road unofficial sites coming into the country. We had to make a deal with the United States to take 15,000 of the refugees every year, whether we want them or not, because that was the deal that was made. If you want that done, this is what you have to do,
yeah,
which is a tiny amount compared to what's going into the United States right now. So I suppose it's not so bad. Now, the problem, of course, is the whole world wants to come to Canada or the West. The whole world, Africa and Asia are swarming Europe. People are dying in the Channel, in the Mediterranean, trying to get to Europe. They're dying in the Channel, trying to get to England. England wants to send them to Rwanda, or Britain wants to send them to Rwanda. The United States cannot cope with what's coming from the southern borders. The whole world wants to be in the West, and and even real immigration that we need the government hasn't planned for this. Now, you would think that they would have. This is bad organization. This is slowly but surely, we've been hearing warnings from the Bank of Canada and other economic institutions that says, hey, wait a minute, we've got too many people coming in, we don't have enough houses for them. And the government has said, oh, well, no, we're not going to turn down our immigration. We can't do that. It took a lot of convincing by a lot of economic people. And notice, you put this out there too, notice that nobody is calling anybody a racist over this, because these are statistics coming from economists. They're not coming from, if someone on the other side of, like, say, a conservative were to stand up in Parliament and says, it looks to me there's too many immigrants coming in, everyone would point to him and call him a racist. But if the Bank of Canada stands up and says, these are the stats, you can't argue with these, nobody yells, you're a racist. Yeah. Now the government's really in a tight spot, because it has not governed the country well when it comes to immigration. It has said back in 2015 that it was going to go and start building a lot of homes. It did not. It did not do that. It did not progress on that promise. In the meantime, it promised to bring in hundreds of thousands, well, millions more people. It has the idea of getting 1/3 of our population foreign born by 2030 or something like that. And they're on a mission to do that. But they have forgotten the essential thing. You cannot put people in a country that doesn't have enough houses for them. So however, the government of Canada is very, very embarrassed right now. And so they are starting to say that they are going to reduce the amount of students and work permits, that kind of thing. Yeah, go ahead.
However, Dave, as Mike Cushman puts out, and I've talked about this in the past, there are homes. In fact, there are 1.34 million homes sitting empty in Canada right now.
Where are they in Niagara Falls?
There are some in Niagara Falls, and the council know where they are. Right?
Really?
There are empty.
Well, how about you tell me?
There are empty buildings. Well, in fact, I could take you on a drive, Dave, from my house, between my house and City Hall, and I could figure out some places, at least half a dozen places where you could put some homeless people. And probably one of said place, you could probably put about 20 or 30 of them.
There are not enough homes. I don't even care if there's lots empty. There's still not enough.
I grant you that. While there are 1.34 million homes, and we have a significant number of them empty here, what we don't have is policies that actually turn around and say to people, if you don't own your home, if you don't use your home, it will be taken from you.
Well, that's a different matter. And I do appreciate the fact that a lot of, for instance, my brother's neighborhood has turned into a rental neighborhood. He lives in the North End, and he's a nice suburban neighborhood, and his neighborhood is turning into a rental neighborhood because people from outside the city are buying homes and then renting them.
Yeah,
and that's happened. And I talked to Paul Lemire, who said the same thing's happening in his neighborhood, where the houses are being bought by people usually from the GTA, and they're being rented. But that means they're being rented and people are going into them. And I expect that that's going to happen with a lot of the empty homes. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what you say, no matter how many houses that are left empty, there are just too many people coming in. You cannot have 400,000 people come into a province and think in 1 year and think there's going to be 400,000 places for them to live.
Okay, so
You may be able to build 100,000 of them, but you're not going to be able to build 400,000 of them.
I don't deny that we need to build homes. I'm just saying that there are empty homes, and Mike Cushman is saying exactly the same. He
Yes,
said,
but
"There's
I would
three
say
empty-"
that is superfluous to what we're talking
Yeah.
about here. And that is that in reality, there is not enough homes,
Yeah,
even if those homes were
absolutely.
filled, even
Yeah,
if those Airbnbs or whatever those homes were, empty homes were filled, there would not be enough homes for everyone. There would
yeah,
not be enough homes. The reason why the people can't afford homes is because there's too few of them. And when you have too few of them, the prices of them go up.
yeah. And
You know,
hey,
if you've got 100 people looking for a car and you've got 50 cars to sell, then you're going to pay way more than the car is worth. But if
yeah.
you have 100 cars and 100 people, then they're going to be able to pay. You're going to be able to buy a car for what it's worth.
And if you've got, and conversely, if you've got 100 people looking for a car, but you've got 150 cars on the lot, well, that's everybody's got freedom of choice. There's lots of cars to go around, right?
But the problem is we do not have enough homes. Even
Yeah,
if you count the empty ones there and get people in them, you still don't have enough homes
yeah.
because you have
I agree.
so many people coming. Not only that, but you have students. You have all kinds of students, and this is where it gets
Well,
difficult because the universities and colleges are making money hand over fist with students, foreign students. So they want more coming in.
yeah.
There's no place for
And
them to live. And then you've
and
got your
talking about that, yeah,
what the government hasn't been able to do is to stop, Joe's University that is in a corner store beside the corner store in a mall. They call themselves an educational institution, and people from all over the world apply to get in there, and they're allowed to get in. And it's not really a school at all. It's like it's just a front for getting people into the country. So work visas, student visas, and immigration is overtaxing our housing. And that's the whole point of this article, why the Bank of Canada has said that and has been saying it for some time. And the government of Ontario, of the Liberals have resisted it, saying that no, we're not going to reduce our amount of immigration. We're not going to reduce the amount of students. But now they are, because the government has begun to respond to these reports by economists. They've been embarrassed by it, and so they've been kind of addressing it in dribs and drabs and little baby steps. But by the time the election is going to come up, they're going to be able to promise everybody that they're going to be able to reduce the amount of immigrants basically coming into the country in order to catch up with housing. You watch, that's going to happen.
yeah,
As you
yeah.
can see by the article that follows there, that that the if I can get it open, the
Which one?
article that I put in there that follows, Ottawa's inaction is fraying the consensus on immigration in a stunning yet
I couldn't open that.
predictable turnabout in public opinion.
I can't open that one, Dave.
Yes, what it basically says is the Nano research showed that 61% of Canadians thought that immigration levels should either be increased
That's
or
what we were
stay the
just talking
same,
about.
in keeping with decades old. Right. So they flipped it, and
We were just discussing exactly that. That was exactly what we were
yes,
just discussing.
yes, of course. But the issue here is it is something that the government is now actually paying attention to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if there was another article, I couldn't open it.
Yes. And there's two there from the Globe Mail I put up there.
Well, Globe and Mail. One I couldn't read. One I couldn't read at all. All right.
So you can, despite the fact that you might have Airbnbs and empty buildings here in Niagara, remember Niagara is a easy shot for the GTA to for people from the GTA to invest in.
It is, and the majority of the time, there's not an issue about turning, whether the house, whether the house that is rented across the street from you is rented by a local person or a person from the GTA shouldn't really matter. And what should matter
Well,
is that it's on the rental market. The difference between a person in the GTA is that they are not going to be aware of the the local conditions, and they're likely to put the prices are likely they charge are likely to be higher.
it says here, so far on immigration, there have only been the most tentative of measures to boost to permanent immigration targets to 2026, following years of increases and a doubling of the amount of financial resources that international students must have before entering the country. So they've been trying to slow down the flow. But the Liberals have to date been unwilling to make bigger reforms needed to roll back the sharp rise in the number of temporary workers and international students. Canada would have a housing crisis even without those hundreds of thousands of temporary workers and students, but they have added to the housing demand and intensified price pressures. So the government themselves, the policies of the government are those things that are pushing up the prices of houses
Yeah,
and dwelling.
I
And
would
so the
agree.
government's really stuck between a rock and a hard place. It has these idealistic ideas of educating the world and or bringing in, making sure that Canada is 1/3 foreign born. I don't know why that's such important, but that's the Liberals' idea. They want the Canadians to be 1/3 foreign born by 2030 or something like that. And if that's the case, where are you going to put the houses? You need houses to put them in.
Well,
They haven't
isn't
thought of.
isn't
They haven't seen that. Go ahead.
isn't Canada already 1/3 foreign born? Yeah, pretty well every other person I speak to is not from here originally. Was yeah, you were born in Canada, but in my daily lives, I'd probably say that 50% of all people that I meet, even many that have got broad Canadian accents, are not born in Canada.
Well, we live in a southern Ontario, of course, and that's the vacuum for most new immigrants, the southern Ontario.
Yeah,
So what's
that's true.
happening in
That's
southern
true.
Ontario might not be emblematic of what's happening other places in the country.
It's very true. And you see, remember that those people who've been here, who've been here 50, 60 years, they're still immigrants. Anyway, yeah, that's fine.
I'm
But
looking it up now.
yeah, I mean,
Currently, the annual immigration in Canada amounts to around 500,000 new immigrants, one of the highest rates per population of any country in the world. As
yeah.
of 2022, there were more than 8 million immigrants with permanent residents living in Canada, roughly 20% of the population. Well, Liberals want that to be 30%. And they don't want to stop until that happens. That is their ideal. That for some reason that's part of their government policy. So if you have now 20% of the population foreign born, they want 30% foreign born. Is that really such a good idea? I'm not so sure. Yeah, it's fine if you have houses for them. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's I think where we can agree the biggest challenge lies is, as you say, it's not the question about whether we should be letting people in at the moment is not one of race. It's not a racist. It's not racist at all. It's one of concern that we don't have other policies in place that are ready to put these people up.
Uh, Now, the problem is not just exacerbated by the amount of immigrants coming into the country. It is also exacerbated by the amount of foreign workers temporary workers, and students. Now, a lot of those students end up staying here. That's why they want to get into the country, and that's why they'll go to Dave Wheeler's School of Technology that I start in my second bedroom, and they can apply for it and get anybody can get into the country if they're applying to come in for schooling. The government has reduced that. They made it very clear that Dave Wheeler's college that I start in the corner store is not just as a means of getting of helping people getting into Canada. They're trying to track that down now. They are reducing the amount of because what happens also is when students come here, they are if they don't have enough financial resources, the government ends up having to pay for them. They end up becoming the people who can't pay their bills, and the government's stuck paying for them. Maybe sometimes they become refugees, turn from students into refugees. All these things are loopholes that people get into the country. So it's not just immigrants that are putting a strain on our housing and pushing price of houses up. It is these foreign resident workers and students. And then, of course, you add on top of that the refugees. So there is a lot of strain in Canada. What I don't really like about all this, or what confuses me the most about this, is why did not the government listen to the warnings that were coming? Like Bank of Canada has had to embarrass the government a number of times in the last year about its immigration rate. It has to have, I mean, that's unprecedented when the Bank of Canada has told you behind closed doors what's happening. And if you ignore it, then they have to go out into the public to make everybody aware that the government programs are not working. And they are part of the problem that is exacerbating house prices.
Well, you see, back in the Harper government, when I first came to Canada, they were talking about immigration as a means of boosting the skill levels we've got of Canadians. But yet, at the moment, we seemed the skill aspect of it has gotten missing.
Well, of course, because I told you before, anytime I've been, you can get paperwork on anything you want. So if the dumbass elitist student, 25 years old, is working in the immigration department, and Abdul comes over and he says, "Oh, I'm a carpenter. Oh, we need carpenters. Okay, come on in, Abdul." But Abdul doesn't know what end of the hammer to use to drive in the nail, but he's got a piece of paper that says he's a carpenter, because somebody gave it to him. And then they say, "Oh, sorry, Abdul, we don't need any carpenters anymore, but we really need is electricians." "Well, I got paperwork for that here too. Here, I'm an electrician, it says so right here." And the immigration people says, "Oh, you're an electrician. Okay, come on in." The fact of the matter is, they don't know how to, particularly in the developing country, they don't know how to determine who's a skilled worker and who's not. What you're going to do is get a pile of laborers that might have put in a socket once, or might have helped a plumber put in a tube. This happens all the time. When I worked for OPG, they had a couple of workers that got jobs because they said they in OPGs because they said they can do this or that, but because they were people of color, that suited the OPG, right? Even though the guy didn't know what he was doing, but okay, well, we could tell the government we've got a person of color that's an operator, but he don't know anything about operating. We're gonna have to teach him from scratch. You know what I mean? So that is a problem. Getting skilled people into the country is a problem. Because whoever is screening them doesn't know a hammer from a screwdriver, and somebody comes along and tells them they're a carpenter. How do they know?
Yeah, and yet when when I put the paperwork in, oh my God, the nth degree that I had to go to, I had to put like I had to get 5 or 6 people to vouch for my professional status.
Yeah, well, right now they need a lot of carpenters, and where are they going to get 5 people to vouch for their
Yeah.
status as a carpenter? Well, they're going to get all their cousins, aren't they? They're going to get the Joe Blow's Abdul's construction company, who doesn't really exist.
Well,
Write
my
write a
credentials.
recommendation for them.
You see, my credentials came from came from the British Computer Society. My credentials came from
Sure, and they can be tracked.
in a
They can be
temple.
tracked, and they can be
Yeah.
get. But if you bring in people from developing countries, and you say you need carpenters from India or Afghanistan or wherever else, and you have a quota of how many people you have to take from this part of the world, and somebody tells you that, and there is no trackable, there is no way in which you can trace the efficacy of their paperwork. So, because you are under pressure to bring in X amount of people from such and such a part of the world, you rubber stamp it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So so let's move on anyway. To another aspect. Loblaws is basically pushing for Doug Ford to change the rules about cannabis, because currently what happens is the rules are that grocery stores can't sell cannabis because cannabis can't be sold there's regulations that say cannabis can't be sold in stores where items such as snacks and chocolate can be available for purchase, because of the fact that there are cannabis laden snacks and chocolate as well, potentially, that could be sold in a cannabis store. And Loblaws are basically lobbying for change in this area. They want to be able to have the supermarkets apply for licenses to sell cannabis products, much in the same way as the supermarkets today sell beer and and have these wine franchises within their walls.
I really can't really see cannabis being sold on a shelf like beer. Because cannabis can be easy. I don't know. Particularly when there's such a lot of pilfering going on in stores these days. To be able to steal cannabis is a lot easier than.
Yeah.
And what I'm really worried about is youth, people underage being able to steal it when they're in a store or something like that. It's a bit of a surprise for me that the grocery stores are already zeroing in on the government to make cannabis legal in stores like that. I would have expected that the liquor store would have got the licenses for that first. I would have thought there would have been a combined liquor and cannabis store. That's the way I thought it would have happened. But as it turns out, there's lots of independent cannabis stores, and they're not doing too well.
No, they're not doing too
Many of
well.
them are.
Basically, there was a place, and I said this. I said this. In 2021, there was a corner in St. Catharines that I went past, and there's in there's a corner, there's a store in the corner, there's another store just 50 meters away from the other corner, and if you follow each of the 4 roads down within another 150 to 200 meters, there were 6 or 7 cannabis stores within the 700-meter radius of that crossroads, right?
And
Clearly only 1 or 2 of them were going to survive, and only 1 or 2 of them did.
Well, yeah, because everybody thought it would be a great idea to start selling cannabis. That's going to be the new way. You know what I mean? There's going to be lots of people wanting cannabis, so there should be lots and lots of stores. But you can get it delivered to your door.
Yeah.
through the Ontario Cannabis Store. You can
Yeah.
get it delivered to your store, anything you want. Now, the biggest complaint I've heard about cannabis products is that they call it government dope, and they don't think it's very good for those people who are dope smokers. I'm not one, but that's what I hear. The government dope is not all that good, and I have no way of verifying that one way or another. But I do know that legal dope is going to be a thing, and if you can get it delivered to your door by the Ontario Cannabis Store, then why even go out the door to go buy it in a store? But if you're going grocery shopping anyway, you can get your beer and your dope at the same time. So it's a smart move by a store like Loblaws, who understands that's what's going on out there. People don't take an independent move to go to the cannabis store as much as they do maybe to the liquor store. So in my mind, I think I'm very, very worried about beer store employees and liquor store employees losing out. And I think that would be a nice place to put it, in beer stores and in liquor stores. So the people who work there and have pretty good jobs keep those jobs. That's my thinking. But I appreciate the fact that Loblaws understands how the average person shops, and they can see that there would be a huge windfall for them if they can get dope in their grocery stores. Because seriously, if you go to that's a one-stop shopping thing. You go get your cabbage, you go get your fruit and vegetables, you go get your milk and cheese, and oh, by the way, I'm having a party on Friday, so I'll grab a few cans of beer and a pack of reefers.
Yeah, I'm yeah, basically, I can't. There's part of me that kind of says, well, I'm utterly opposed. I don't like the idea of supermarkets getting involved in this. But then the other part of me says, well, actually, why the hell not? They're involved in everything else. We run our lives through our supermarkets very often. Everything we get is from the supermarket or the convenience store.
Yeah, I can't really think of the flyers. The grocery. Can you think of the grocery store flyers? This week we've got get a break on bacon, save on your spliffs.
Yeah, it's like, but you see, 90% of what they sell in in cannabis stores isn't the smoking variety of product anyway. 90% of what is sold is CPD oils and the like, aren't they?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Not not smoking, not cannabis smoking stuff. Anyway. Okay, so moving on, I think this one actually is a problem. We've kind of been talking about this for a while. So a Welland man experienced homelessness, nearly froze to death on Sunday, according to an outreach group. When this latest storm rolled into the city, beyond the streets, Welland discovered this 27-year-old man in a blanket, wet, hypothermic, and with frostbite near Welland Market Square on downtown on Sunday morning.
Yeah, this is unfortunately, as Mike Cushman has said, that we're gonna find a few dead people this year. We might get lucky because it does look like it's going to be getting more milder, and we're in for a fairly mild winter overall. So we may not we may not find a whole lot of dead bodies this time around in Ontario, at least southern Ontario. So we might get lucky that way, but it is times like this when it's very cold, and we got a close call right here in Welland, where they don't have enough spaces, and they wanted to get this guy into a space, but they would have had to take him outside of Welland, and he didn't want to leave Welland because he knows if you take them and put them somewhere else, nobody's going to bring him back.
Yeah.
he's stuck wherever you take them
Yeah.
because there's no way for him to get back. So that's why he didn't want to leave Welland, and yet they didn't seem to be able to find him a spot. But there's got to be more spaces open. Like Paul Lemire and I talked about this earlier, like the public library downtown. You can close off the area where the books are and just fill the audit the meeting rooms and stuff like that with chairs and let somebody come in and just sit down and warm up, and also use the washroom.
That's not a bad idea. Was that what Paul Lemire was saying?
Yeah,
Suggesting?
he's saying there's places there is no
one of those meeting rooms
there is no real there's he also mentioned the McBain Center. Why don't you open that up? And at freezing cold nights, there is a McBain Center there that's sitting empty after 9 o'clock. You can open it up and put homeless people in there so they can stay warm at least. And there's also washrooms they could use.
Oh yeah, and you can close off the offices, the library, the swimming pool, etc., etc. So there's no public safety issue, and employ a guard or two to make sure that they are kept keeping a specific area.
Yeah,
And
just like I mean, you don't have to provide them with beds or anything, but you do have to provide them with a place where they can just stay warm.
Yeah.
And exactly. You could do that. So there is no excuse for having someone freeze to death.
Yeah. And the thing is that absolutely, and we could provide a security guard just to make sure there's they could provide a security just to make sure that there's no kind of pilfering or damage or that sort of thing going on. Yeah.
He also said when push comes to shove, get a bus out. Start it up. Let people go in the bus.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can get a bus nice and warm pretty quickly by just idling it.
And just occurs to me that on a cold day like today, like how much is it to get on a bus? $3.25. If a homeless person got on a bus for $3.25, they could ride probably that bus for probably at least a couple of hours.
Yes. In fact, people do that in the subways and all that. They go into the subways where
that's absolutely very true. That's actually one of the areas in London, the Circle Line, particularly because it's a circle in the center of London. You get on and you just keep traveling it for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah,
and that's what many homeless do.
Sadly, this is a problem that keeps coming back over and over and over again. And another thing that Paul talked about yesterday was he brought up this. He brought up the fact that when they were talking about how they're going to issue grants to places like Project Share and Pathstones and whatever else, he's brought on the situation that there's a new process coming up about how these places are going to be getting the grants, and he's saying what we have said constantly over and over again, that nothing's getting any better. It's getting worse, and all we do is spend and I after like we just keep getting bigger and bigger band-aids for a wound that's getting bigger and bigger, and we're not addressing the whatever that thing is that's making the wound. What's cutting us so deep all the time, and we kind of know it, but we can't address it. And so how do we change?
Well, it remains the elephant in the room, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and you can't let people starve. You can't let them die. But that's as far as we've got. We're gonna make sure that you're not gonna freeze to death. We're gonna make sure you're not gonna starve to death. But that's as far. This is all we got. We got nothing more. We got nothing to take them to the next level, reincorporate them as a person in our society. And that demographic is growing, and that demographic is growing with the assailing of the middle class, where the middle class is beginning to divide between the haves and the have-nots and the middle class. That's very, very dangerous for democracy when that happens.
Well, basically, going to take this back to Welland, beyond the streets, outreach workers are basically saying there are 25 regular people living under bridges, in bushes, and behind businesses, and so this is a regular occurrence according to them. They're obviously monitoring them, on a regular basis, and it's definitely a big problem that we've got. And we're just not getting, we're not getting to the bottom of it. We're not resolving it.
Look, we this year or in 2023, we gave the soup kitchen $2,000 more than we usually do. We give them $12,000. It's a drop in the ocean. It's a drop in the ocean. You know what I mean? It just it's
Yeah.
just not nearly enough. And it's the best we could do, but it's a drop in the
Well,
ocean.
and we've given
12,000
donations.
bucks. Imagine $12,000 being a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, we've given donations, and I'm sure a lot of people have given donations to the soup kitchen. And you go there and you're giving your donations, and honestly, you can just look there and you can feel that, hey, the bag of rice or whatever it is that you've just given as your donation isn't even going to feed these people in line.
Well, Chris Simone here is saying the reason it's getting worse is because we aren't talking to the recipients.
Probably true.
Well, they never really do they?
No.
If
And that's part of the problem that we have. We don't talk to, I'm not talking about you and I'm talking, politicians don't talk to the people who are facing the problem on the front line. They never do.
well, you know what? It reminds me of when they do when they put things in washrooms or make places accessible for the disabled. They never take a disabled person with them. I had a friend that was disabled and he was in a wheelchair all the time. Sometimes you try to get him into that one booth that's for that disabled person if somebody else isn't always using it, because it's always in a place. Quite often, it's in a place at the end where you have to go past a narrow place where there's other booths and sinks and stuff. And then if a disabled person tried to do it themselves, they couldn't do it. If they bring sinks down lower so disabled people can use it, but they don't take a disabled person with them, somebody in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
to put the sinks where they can reach them.
Yeah.
They don't. They're there for the disabled people, and the disabled people can't use them. Why? Because they didn't bring somebody in with a or they're too far away to reach for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're down low, but they're way over there. And everybody said, "Oh, here we go. Here's something for a person in a wheelchair." But they don't take a person with a wheelchair. They don't take a person that's in a wheelchair there to see how far they can reach.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, that's actually very, very true, very practical. Because in fact, when it comes to that, and and you're right. It's like, how do they get to reach? Because the practical thing is that a wheelchair. If I were my chair on my desk, I can slide it right underneath. So I'm butting up to the camera's edge here, right? So I'm right in the face of the camera because I can slide my chair under the desk.
Yeah, that was pretty scary.
But if it's a wheelchair, the challenge here is that probably this thing stuck up out of the wheelchair that are about 18 inches ahead of where the armrest on my chair lies. So this is about as close to the desk as I can get.
Yes.
So I'm not able to reach and get into the desk. I certainly wouldn't be able to type unless I pick that keyboard up and use it on my lap.
Well, anyway, when Chris Simone says they didn't talk to recipients, he's probably right. Yeah, they're the ones that know, and if you don't consult them, how do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that Paul is right about the idea of opening up the opening up the libraries and the
McBain Center, yeah.
Brain Center and other places if we can. If we can open these sections, keep them warm, keep them out of the cold, do it.
Yep. Just get a bus and go around town, pick them all up, and take them to the McBain Center, or open that part of the library, the part that's not doesn't have the books in it or the computers. Keep those rooms locked. But you've got washrooms, and you've got a big foyer, and you've got the LaMarche room right there where they can all sit down in there, or even just stay warm through the night. And what you would have to do is just hire a couple security guards, a couple of hardy big lads that won't take guff, and just so that they don't kill each other or smoke or whatever else, and let them just stay warm for the night. And we can't leave, unfortunately, that's the situation we have right now. We've got this lovely library. Unfortunately, we should be able to put it to use at nighttime. The McBain Center too. You can close off all the offices and everything. Just leave the washrooms open, and in the hallways there. Look how much room is there just in the front of the McBain Center. It's huge, right? And if you go upstairs, there's more room up there.
Yeah.
So there are rooms that are empty up there that you could just open up and let people go in. There's chairs where they could sit in and so on. And then we can't let them set up permanent dwellings there, but we can certainly let them stay warm or to cool down in the summertime. Any other time they'll be outside. So sadly, we are in that situation.
Yeah. All right. We have one more article, but we're going to have to leave that one till tomorrow.
Okay.
Because we won't. If we talk about it today, we're not going to give it justice.
All right. Which one is that?
Freedom is not a license.
Oh yeah, definitely. We could have some fun with that.
All right. Yeah. So
then
we'll start with that one tomorrow. Okay. And we'll move on. I got another story for you already, which I didn't put out before the show, but we should probably discuss.
Okay.
All right. So thank you, everybody. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu. Have a lovely cold day.
Thank you all. Bye.